Do you want to know how to fix your irritable bowel syndrome? We're going to talk about 3 different ways to approach that depending on if you are new to this diagnosis, if you have it ongoing or chronic. You'll get some different ideas on how to approach this. A simple approach, strategic approach, and the traditional approach. We're all about helping you gain a deeper understanding of your health and what's going on with your body. Hopefully this video gets you a little bit closer towards that aim. Also wanted to point out that sometimes when I'm producing this content, I get a statistic wrong or the name of something wrong, and almost always there's a corresponding blog article on our website, swintegratedmedicine.com/blog. You can find it there. Those oftentimes go into a little bit more detail than the videos do as well. So please check that out if you're interested. And it does take considerable effort to produce this content. So if you're liking the information, please click on the like button and subscribe to the channel. If you do have questions about any of the content, please ask it in the comment section here or on the blog. That's why I'm producing the information, for you to gain that deeper understanding. So ask the questions if you have them. Hope you enjoy the video. Thank you for watching. Let's get into it. So we want to talk about 3 ways you can fix or cure your irritable bowel syndrome, aka IBS. So the first thing to think about with this question is it's not all the same. So IBS, there's different variations of it, and within that there's different causes. So it's not just one thing. For instance, there's IBS-C and IBS-D to differentiate people that have more constipation type and more diarrhea type. But even within these categories, there's different causes and variations. So it's not a homogeneous or one problem. We often think about it that way, and to a certain extent it is similar causes, but they're not always exactly the same. So before we can look at these different things that are impacting your digestive health, we want to ask, what is IBS to begin with, so we can further distinguish what these causes are. So IBS is the term given to people that have significant digestive distress, and all other causes have been ruled out. So IBS stands for Irritable Bowel Syndrome, and it's a syndrome because basically it's a bunch of symptoms, but there's no known specific pathology that applies to all of them. So these are people that usually they've ruled out that they don't have ulcerative colitis, they don't have Crohn's, they don't have celiacs, they don't have cholecystitis or some sort of gallbladder issue, they don't have GERD, etc. So all the known, the solid diagnoses that have clear treatment paths in traditional gastroenterology, these things have been ruled out in these people. And so basically they're left with this label of you have IBS, even though, as we said, IBS is not all the same for everyone. So traditional doctors usually do a good job at pinpointing one of these other things, and when they don't have those diagnoses, they get labeled with probably having IBS, even though it's not the same for everyone. So the first thing you want to do to cure your IBS, or one approach, doesn't necessarily have to be the first way, but one approach might be to go that route, get a traditional GI doctor evaluation, or go to your primary care and rule some of these things out, or follow up with a GI doctor to make sure some of these things are not present. And then there may be other ways to approach curing all those things too, but there's traditional treatments that can be very beneficial that way. Okay, so let's say you've ruled out all these other organic or underlying pathologies that may be causing your IBS, or causing your digestive distress, we'll say. And now you have this label of IBS. What do you do next? Well, I break this into 2 categories, simple and strategic. And depending on how long you've had the issue or what you've tried, you may decide to do one or the other of these. So usually if it's a newer diagnosis, or you haven't tried a whole lot of things, you might want to try the simple approach, because it is simple and may not require a whole lot of guidance. And the strategic may be for somebody that's a little more chronic. They've tried a few things already, so we'll just break it into those two categories. And so let's first take the simple approach. So the simple approach is basically you have basically foods like dairy, gluten, and things like that could be disrupting or impacting your digestive system and causing some problems. So I'll break this into three main categories. So when you have basically foods that you're looking at, you can look at food sensitivities, which you can test for. You can look at high histamine foods, which you can also test for empirically, and then you can also look at high FODMAP, low FODMAP foods and test empirically. So these are sort of three categories of diets and testing that you can do to see if some of these foods how they're impacting your digestion and whether or not you benefit. Now, there is some overlap between each one, and you certainly can't do all these all at once, but it may be an experimental thing that you may find beneficial. So first, food sensitivity. So there's many people have heard of the autoimmune protocol diet. It's basically a hypoallergenic diet. It removes a lot of the food culprits that typically cause inflammation and GI distress, which can lead to inflammation. So other people may know this as the elimination diet, etc. So that's one that may be helpful for you. You can also do a test for food sensitivities. High histamine foods are another, have some overlap with some of the high inflammatory foods or the autoimmune protocol foods. Some of them are high histamine foods, but not all of them are. With high histamine foods, there's not consensus on which ones are always high. So that can be a little bit tricky to figure that out, but maybe more important for people that have allergies in addition to having digestive symptoms. And then the third would be high and low FODMAPs. So there's a lot of information on high FODMAP foods, pretty easy to research that one. But there are a lot of foods in that category, so you generally want to look and see, how am I responding to these? And remember that food triggers, foods that trigger your IBS symptoms may be a signal that something deeper is going on with your microbiome. Specifically, with high FODMAP foods, that's a signal that you actually have bacterial overgrowth or some sort of microbial imbalance that you probably want to take care of that rather than just eliminating the foods, because it's not really getting at the underlying cause. So, but with that being said, if you do find benefit from these, maybe a temporary fix or something you could do for now until you can figure out or get some support from a doctor to actually treat you for the SIBO or whatever microbial imbalance is present. So the third way we're going to talk about to cure or fix your irritable bowel syndrome is strategic. So what are some ways to approach this holistically or strategically so you make sure you're not missing anything? I would usually want to test for microbial things first, or at least part of the picture should be that. And you can also do food sensitivities. You can also look at leaky gut. You can also do some sampling of your microbiome to see where some imbalances might be. You don't need to do all these at once, but you want to think about them strategically, which I'll come to some ideas around that in just a second. But once you've done these tests and you have some positives, the treatment is usually pretty straightforward. But how you sequence these together is not always obvious. The testing, does help clarify what's going on and what you should do, but it doesn't always give 100% clarity into what's going on with your body. So some general rules to follow that I like to use is you want to first start by treating or ruling out that you don't have anything seriously compromising to your body. So these would usually be microbial things. So you want to look and see if you have any of those first. So you might want to do the SIBO test or look for Candida antibodies in your blood, or some sort of stool test to look for this, or other potentially pathogenic microbes. If those are present, then obviously you'll treat those, but when you're treating those, you may get worsening of symptoms. So you're looking for, as you're going along, either a dramatic improvement in your symptoms, 50 or 75% we'll say, or flare-ups or worsening of your symptoms. And when they're flare-ups, typically you want to go back and support the underlying GI function, or sometimes, depending on where those flare-ups are occurring, some of the rest of the body cellular function. The amount and duration of treatment pressure that you apply to the person at any given time, and the amount of cellular support you give to the person at any given time is going to be unique to each person based on, their genetics or how bad it is and things like that. But once the microbial issues have been ruled out or eliminated, then typically we would move on to, and of course you're not 100% better, then typically you would move on to things like genetic or other food-related issues. So those are some ways to approach the strategic things. All these things can be tested for, but again, you can't get 100% clarity on what's going on at any given time. There's just not, the technology just isn't there yet. So hopefully that gives you some better ideas. So that's all I had for you in this video about how to fix or cure your irritable bowel syndrome. Hopefully this gives you a deeper understanding of what could be going on and how to approach that. As I mentioned, you can use these interchangeably. You can use the simple and the strategic along with seeing a GI doctor. You probably wouldn't want to use the simple and the strategic at the same time, as that would get confusing. But certainly as your issues go from being more acute or starting to more chronic issue, you may want to look deeper into some of these other things. If you do have questions about any of the content here or something that's going on with your IBS, please ask it in the comments section. If you like the video, click on the like button, subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.